From likes to lies, two defense experts are showing the deadly side of social media. The new book, Like War, sets out to explain the weaponization of our online profiles. PW Singer and Emerson T. Brookings say governments are capitalizing on this new front at record speed. I sat down with the authors to discuss how your social networks may be part of the solution or the problem. Emerson and PW, thanks so much for joining us. So your book is called Like War. As a clarification, this isn't cyber war we're talking about, correct? This is social media war. Can you elaborate on that, PW?
So the idea of cyber war is the hacking of networks. What's playing out with Like War is the hacking of the people like you and I on the networks by driving ideas viral through a mix of likes and lies.
And that's become so important in the world that we live in right now. Your social media presence has become so important that it can change the outcome of historical events, Emerson?
Yes. There are certain actors online who control a disproportionate amount of attention. The most obvious example of which is the President of the United States. And if just a few of these people seize on an idea or seed it into the public sphere, it can totally change the nature of discussion.
So is it safe to say then the president is an example of someone who is a very shrewd user of social media?
Well, what's playing out is that you have these new rules of the game, and they've upset everything from the news business to politics to war. And there were groups like ISIS that fell into this first. Donald Trump would be another who figured out the rules of the game first. Taylor Swift would be another. But one of the rules of the game is everything's out in the open. So it's all playing out on the networks for you and I to watch, but also all the other actors out there to watch. So everybody's learning, and that's why it's going to continue. So, you know, the rules in politics, we're going to see this play out in 2018. Terrorism, people are copying ISIS. Celebrities are copying what Taylor Swift's doing.
In your book, you point out that ISIS used some of the techniques that Taylor Swift used on social media to garner followers.
That's right. She was an early adopter of social media. She was one of the first big artists on MySpace, jumped over to Instagram, and engaged frequently with her followers. They felt like she was one of them. In much the same way, when you had recruits going to the Islamic State, they would continue to be active on social media. They'd engage with other folks who might have been interested in joining the group, and the end result was that 30,000, mostly millennial-aged people across the Middle East, but also across 30 Western nations, either went to Syria to join ISIS or conducted acts of violence at home because they felt that same connection to those fighters.
And there is the power of social media right there. And ISIS is one example, but there are many examples, correct, where social media has led to mob actions that have resulted in deaths. Is that right, PW?
Well, so this technology is like every other, where it can be used for both good and bad. So you get something like crowdsourcing. Crowdsourcing can be used for all of us to come together to raise money to fight a disease, the Ice Bucket Challenge. And then that very same Ice Bucket Challenge was used by a terrorist group to raise money for it. Or you get the idea of no more secrets. It can be used by governments to detect who's saying bad things about them. There have been people who've been jailed for something that they posted on Twitter, but it also can be used by us to find war crimes. And then the point in all of this is that this technology's kind of shooken up the different spaces, created new dynamics. But the problem is we're all players in it. But we don't understand the rules of the game, and so we're becoming targets and being taken advantage of.
Do you think there's a greater understanding now that we learned the extent to which Russians influenced online media and social media before the 2016 election?
I think the scale of it was not recognized at the time, in large part because it was taking place in the open. We were looking for secret Russian spies, not ads on Facebook that over 140 million Americans were going to see. And it wasn't just on Facebook, it was on Twitter, it was on Instagram, and we're coming to grips with it. But the problem is when you think about the discussion of, say, election security, a hot topic related to the upcoming election, we're still focusing on the, are they going to be able to hack the voting machine, not the fact that they've, in effect, hacked the voter and the atmosphere around the vote.
Let's talk for a moment about the Kavanaugh controversy and how this is all playing out in real time on social media. Emerson, I feel that when you're looking on social media for information about Kavanaugh, it's very easy to fall into an echo chamber of your own beliefs already. Is that the way controversial issues in general play out on social media?
Yes, and it will be that way from here on out, unfortunately. If you watched the hearings and happened to even stop by Twitter for a minute, you saw basically one side in a war, information conflict, in which observers were trying to spin any event, any phrase that was out of place, any image, to see some advantage in this tug of war for the opinion of the American people. And it bore much resemblance to the more serious information conflicts, like the tactics of ISIS or these Russian trolls.
Well, it went so far at one point to even have somebody change a Wikipedia entry, is that right?
Exactly, and it was a near perfect mirror of what Russia had done after the shoot down of the airliner over Ukraine a couple years ago. Very soon after, Russians go on to Wikipedia and basically change the story of what happened there. And of course, Wikipedia is where we go to for,
to check everything, right?
History.
Make sure.
And so in this case, Kavanaugh had used a term that is a sexual term, but he said it was a drinking game.
I think we can say devil's triangle.
You said it, not me.
We're allowed to say that.
Okay, but there was literally no evidence on the internet of his claim. However, in the midst of the hearing, someone at the House of Representatives goes on to Wikipedia to create evidence for it. So it's part of this bigger issue of not just a battle over your point of view, but a battle over reality itself. So for the people that go to that site and see it, that's their reality, even though it may not be the case.
Where is this all heading? Because, via your book and via experts like yourselves, we're all getting a little bit smarter about this, but then AI is getting even smarter. In other words, there are programs that can now make you or me look as if we're saying or doing anything, and that can be posted on social media. Are people ready for that next wave of misinformation?
I think the challenge of this is that overall, the United States, the home of the internet, we're now the example that other nations use of the victim they don't want to become. So we're already behind the curve here. With AI, what's happening, as you note, is that you're going to get more convincing ways to trick people, whether it's a chat bot or hyper-realistic imagery. It's this thing known as deep fakes, videos that you can't tell are fake. But the irony is that the tech companies are turning to AI to help us detect these fakes. So the future of this space is going to be two AIs battling with poor little old us in the middle.
So you don't see then, Emerson, any future in which social media will have reduced importance in our lives?
No. This technology came out of nowhere. 20 years ago, none of these platforms existed. It's been the quickest, most total communications revolution in human history. It's totally changed the way we conduct our politics and every other aspect of our lives. And we may eventually see platforms that supersede these, but there really is no going back.
And so if there were any sort of one warning that you would want to leave your readers with, viewers, what would that be?
To understand that whether you wanted to be or not, you are a target of hundreds and thousands of information conflicts playing out at the same time, battling for your attention. And what you decide to believe, what you decide to accord your attention to, helps one of these actors or another in these conflicts.
P.W. Singer, Emerson Brooking, thanks to both of you for being with us. Fascinating book you've written.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.